What's going on, guys? Welcome to another video. I'm your boy Narik Chase, and in this video, episode 115 of the Streamline Podcast. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is basically the comic book, female-led comic book films of the 1990s. And dang, I didn't have my paperwork right. So, before we get into the video, be sure to hit that like, subscribe, and that notification button to get the best of what we got going on the channel, as well as the Streamline Podcast will be be released every Saturday at 5 p.m. Be sure to stay tuned for that, as well as uploads that we do on Sundays, as well as Thursdays. So we're trying to be a bit more consistent. Having said that, let's go ahead and jump right into it now. Comic books starting to take off. Comic book films are starting to take off at this point. In the 80s, of course, there is the Superman films, and then the Batman 89 film. Now, there were 3 female-led superhero comic book movies. That was Sheena, Red Sonja, and Supergirl, which we did talk about in episode 114. And this is 115, yeah. In that episode. So now we're going to dive into the 90s, in which there's almost the same amount. Now I think there is like two more, but I only watched 3, and they are Barb Wire 1996, Tank Girl 1995, and Vampirella 1996. And also in these, when I do these, included would be like manga, Marwa. I would say webtoons, but webtoons wasn't a thing then. But that's the general consistency of the when I go with female-led comic book films. I'm including those as well. So let's get into it. Not much of a big selection, but we did manage to have a good, interesting video the first time around. So let's dive into it now. This is the time period where comic book films are starting to kind of make their strides a little bit more. You know, in the 90s, we saw Blade, we saw Spider-Man, we saw Flash, we saw Captain America. We're starting to catch our stride a bit more, especially with like television shows as well. So, and we're starting to see more female action-oriented films. Now, when I say comic book movies, I'm not strictly saying superhero films. I mean, basically films that are based on comics, which could be horrors, they could be thrillers. Having said that, ain't Virus? Yeah, Virus is a comic book, a movie as well. I can't believe I totally forgot about Virus. Let me go ahead and make sure, because if it is, I am going to include it in this review or in this video. 1999 film. I can't believe I complete. Yep, based on the comic book series of the same name. And I want to say female-led, but it has to be particularly female-led. No, it doesn't look like it. I mean, it is based on a, but I don't know if it's led by a female, even though the film itself is, but I'm like a comic book, which is initially led by a female, to a film that's led by a female. So, but anyways, let's go ahead and get into it. The 90s did have more female heroines starting to take more prominent roles in the scenes and stuff. Got the Scream Queens, like in the film Scream. I know she did last summer. Action films as well, with actors like Angelina Jolie stepping up. Got Mila Jovovich starting to make her stride. So there is room for a lot. There is a lot of films out there that are female-led, but comic book ones are the ones we're discussing today. So let's dive into it, which I said probably about the 4th time, but that's okay. All right, so why did Hollywood stop making female comic books led movies, either before this time period or after? We'll talk about that. Before then, there were some in the 80s. Sheena and Red Sonja were, to me, the better ones. Supergirl pretty much killed, especially for the DC. It wasn't received well, and it pretty much killed any potential expanded universe or a cinematic universe that could have been held with what was going on with the Superman franchise, and helped with the tonal shift of films as well. And the thing about it was, And it's not for the lack of female characters. It's just that the '80s showcase that maybe it just wasn't the right time, or maybe perhaps it weren't the right female characters. And then, of course, the '90s pop around, and we get to see more. Now, the weird thing about it is these weren't really Marvel, and these weren't really DC. These were what's good? Ooh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. More obscure characters that we had seen like in Dynamite Comics, Image Comics, and stuff like that. Barb Wire, I've heard of the film, and it wasn't until about a year ago that I actually watched. I didn't say a year ago, a couple of years ago, I actually watched it. I believe I've seen it before a long time ago, but I watched it again, and I actually liked the film. I thought it was a good film, and then I started kind of reading more of the comics. And even though they don't, it pulls a lot from the source material, doesn't really feel enough ish. But ultimately, I thought it was a fun film. Tank Girl, seen it, loved it. Weird as hell, acid trip of a film. Fun. It's still really cool. Vampirella is probably the weakest. But I have a lot to say about that. But I think that's the reason why they started to kind of slow down a bit, because as you see, it started ramping up more in the '90s as far as comic book films, the popularity of it. Hellblade brought everything back into focus. Its success. Now Tank Girl versus Barbed Wire versus Vampirella. I think that's the problem with three. It gets to where it seems like you two are jumping over. Now, I think the best one, in my opinion, in terms of quality, probably would be Barbed Wire, because it's much more grounded than the other two, but it still has that cool kind of dystopian apocalyptic look to it. And then you got Tank Girl, which, if you look at these two films, they feel like they could be in the same world because of the apocalyptic setting of both. And then Tank Girl, in terms of just sheer entertainment, it definitely has a lot of great fun moments with it. So I think those two are kind of, in the same league. And honestly, Barbed Wire does have some solid action sequences. Not the most overblown and over the top and everything, but it's pretty fun, especially during the last act of the film. And then Tank Girl has some fun sequences as well. Now, Vampirella, like I said earlier, is probably the weakest one. The story just isn't there. The fights, it's just not engaging. And Vampirella, who I have come to see as a very interesting character with an interesting, origin story, just doesn't get the shine that it properly deserves. And this is why I could definitely say the script completely failed. And I know I reviewed Talisa Soto's performance as Vampirella on channel, Scenes and Screens and Panels and Pages, but it's not really her fault. It's really up to the writing and the direction. And even the director said he regretted making this film. What kind of things they were smoking, sniffing, I have no idea what they were doing in the '90s, but still, I could definitely see that this is kind of one of those films that was like in development hell. But the popularity of the characters, because Tank Girl started blowing up, Barbed Wire started blowing up, Vampirella started blowing up. They've been around a little bit longer, but they still started blowing up in the '90s, and the popularity definitely was there. It's just that the films just couldn't capture the magic to certain degrees. But I still think they're all enjoyable, except Vampirella. But I would say definitely that. Now, in terms of comic accuracy versus the style, I probably would say to some degree, I would say Barbed Wire probably is the most comic accurate. But at the same time, I would probably say Tank Girl is more. Because I've read Tank Girl. I've read more Barbed Wire than I have Tank Girl. And I've read probably, between the three, I think I've read a lot, about the same amount. I do like Vampirella. I think she's cool. And I think I don't know, because I feel like they all are close, but they missed the mark on something. It feels like, at least with the characters, they are comic book accurate, if not the setting and the story and stuff like that. But I do like them. I do like them. Again, Vampirella. I don't know what to say about Vampirella, but I think it is comic accurate to a certain extent. But just it's the character at least, and some of the backstory, just the rest of the film just doesn't work. Um, Cult classics or bad movies. Now I can definitely see. I'm just jumping on Vampirella. Vampirella is just a bad movie. I ain't heard nobody talk about Vampirella as a classic. I haven't. Tank Girl, I've definitely heard as a cult classic. I actually enjoy the film. It's a bad film by many metrics. Visually, the camera work, the script, the direction, but it's still a fun film. I had that same thing with like Red Sonja, where it's like it could have definitely been better, but it's still something that's close to my heart, and I grew up with it, and I just like it. But I still recognize that it's not like a, a well written film, but it's the performances, it's the characters, some of the kookier moments. I definitely see that more as a cult classic. Now, Barb Wire is a bit of a strange one because I I would consider it a cult classic, but I haven't heard too many people talk about it. I heard people talk more of it being kind of a bad movie. And after watching it, I was like, I don't see how. Now, some good movies don't do well, become cult classics. Some bad movies don't do can do either bad or good and become cult classics. I think Barbed Wire was more of on the bad end of it, but I still think it was still a solid film. I still say it earns the status of being a cult classic. Vampirella, bad movie all the way. um, and let's look at which one of these films definitely has the production design. I personally would say, see, if we look at, excuse me, I'm quite tired. If we look at Tank Girl, the set design, some of the action sequences, the different locations, I would say it has probably the more diverse locations. I would say it definitely has the better production design. But I would say in terms of Barbed Wire, again, it's just because of the setting itself, and having to be in that setting for longer periods of time. I do think that it actually it holds up well. So I'm not sure. I don't sure. I said in terms of consistency, I would say Barbed Wire. In terms of variety, I would say Tank Girl. So pick your poison, I guess. Um, which film has personality? I would say this. Now, this is where I could say Vampirella can definitely kind of compete a bit. For as much as I rag on the film for the poor direction and writing, it's got that cheesy factor to it that can make it enjoyable in certain circles, I guess you could say. I think it's fun to some extent. Yeah, it's bad. I think it's more like bad, but not like it is quite bad, but it does have its sort of charm a little bit. It does have a bit of personality. Look, I can say it's bad, but not boring bad, if that makes sense. In that sense, I can say it does have a bit of personality, and in a sense, it does. Whether it's good personality, I don't know, but I think it does have its kind of flavor, its own little flavor. Now, in terms of personality, but if we're gonna go like straight out, like it's definitely Tank Girl. Lori Petty did her thing as the titular character, and it's definitely that one. It's over the top, it's fun, and even with if we look at, Barbed Wire is pretty grounded. It has a dark and gritty, and Vampirella is cheesy and over the top. And again, I would say Vampirella has a bit more personality than Barbed Wire. Now, that's not to say Barbed Wire is a bad film, but it's just the way the film shot, the story, the characters, the performances, and stuff like that. It's a bit kooky, it's a bit cheesy, a bit over the top, but I think Tank Girl kind of lands there better, because yes, there are some over the top, but it fits the nature of the film and the story that it's telling. And Malcolm McDowell is one of my favorite actors, by the way. But I think that one definitely has the better personality. It's one of those films that you can, if you are with friends, just want to watch something just crazy and that doesn't make any sense, but you can still have a pretty good time with it. Tank Girl's definitely that. So it definitely has the personality. Now, which one of these films deserves a sequel? Personally, I think all of them. I think all of them could work with a sequel, and especially Barb Wire. Barb Wire has such a grounded feel to it that I think that they could explore that world. You know, America is going through a second civil war. There is dystopian, almost apocalyptic, borderline Mad Max kind of thing. Like that'll be a really cool sequel there. Like that could be something to explore, expand upon. You know, different factions, the governments, you know what I'm saying, like stuff like that. Are you telling me that? And I understand why they didn't do a sequel, because the film didn't do well, but I think the opportunity is still there. Now, if they if they would have did a sequel, then I would have been better with it. Not now, because you know everybody's like 30 years older now, so it's just nobody. And then if it was like a passing of the torch type of thing. And also, I could, but you know, so I think that could work. But now I meant for that film during that time period. Now I'm not saying sequels. I'm talking about like within 3 to 5 years of the film. Well, within 2 to 4 years of that film coming out, not 30 years later. But I think that was it. I think it could have had a really cool sequel. Tank Girl, same way, being able to explore more what's going on in the world. Jet Girl, Submarine Girl, you know, them meeting Submarine Girl, over the top. Just everything just over the top. Her developing a relationship with Booga, learning more about different factions, just ultimately pretty much the same thing with Barb Wire. Just learn more about the world, because both of them have interesting settings. It's just an interesting world building, and I would have liked to explore a bit more of both of those. And it would have been cool to see Pamela Anderson like do some more action sequences, because I thought she was decent in the first film. And Vampirella, if the second one could be just written better, I would like to see more of what she can do. I've been interested in her world. Even though she's an alien, there are supernatural elements, which seem to be more introduced, which are introduced in the comics as well. So it's kind of an interesting sci-fi-ish, alien-ish thing going on with like supernatural creatures and monsters and stuff like that. But I would have liked to seen a sequel to that, just done better, because I think Talisa Soto could have been a great Vampirella. She's beautiful. She does have a physical prowess to her, and I think she's capable of capturing what makes that character interesting. Just the writing's bad, and sometimes you can have a bad first movie, the second movie actually tops and is done better. But you also can have a really good first movie and a really bad second movie, or a really bad first movie and an even worse sequel. So I think that one could definitely work. And if we are talking about reboots, because I remember hearing them, I believe they were talking about rebooting Tank Girl. I would actually want them to reboot Barb Wire first, because I think it'd be cheaper, and I think it would be easier to do her character first versus the other ones, because you ain't got to worry about like superpowers and stuff. Even though in the world of Barb Wire, there are superpowered beings. That one chick in that one comic I read, I think it was Steel Harbor Blues, or it was the 2016 one. I'm not sure, but she was end up fighting this chick villain who had this really cool ability to every time she killed a person with the power, she ended up absorbing that power from them and taking it on, and having, you know, that's how she got so powerful. So I thought that'd be pretty cool to see. But I think if they were to remake those, Barb Wire should probably be the first one. Then you can have Tank Girl. No, I would say first Barb Wire, then Vampirella, then Tank Girl. because Tank Girl is if you're gonna remake Tank Girl, you're basically doing like Deadpool and Harley Quinn. Except just like it's gonna be like a Deadpool Harley Quinn thing set in apocalyptic wasteland. And I think as cool as I think that is, I think in terms of quality, I can see Barb Wire kind of being like an action star kind of hitting now if they do it right. If they do it right, they probably won't because of the whole female thing that they're doing now. But they probably, but I think she would be pretty cool. But at the same time too, you know, if you're on Tubi, if you're on, you know, Netflix and stuff, there's like Bad Girl, Bounty Hunters. It's kind of like a dime a dozen now. Ex-military, but I think the IP is good enough to draw draw a crowd, draw some eyes. But I would like to see a Barbed Wire one first, and I would like to see Vampirella, and I would like to see a Tank Girl as well. So, the biggest strengths and the weaknesses of the films: Barbed Wire, the grounded feel, the performances. There is some solid acting. There is some action sequences. Not the most dramatic, not the most visually appealing, but still big grounded and fun. And Pamela Anderson, I think she does a good enough. One, she's super hot. She is, and I think she does a decent acting. Some moments don't land like they should, but I still think she's solid as the character. I actually like her as the character of Barbed Wire. Some things that don't really work about the film is that I would like to have seen more action. I would have liked to seen more special characters, like some one or two superpowered villains. I would have liked to seen much more trauma that she had to deal with the war and stuff, because one of the stories is, you know, she drinks. She owns a bar and she does drink a lot, but she has, you know, fought in the Civil War, so she just kind of had those mental scars, and I like that. But and some of them, and what's that robot guy? That's her assistant. That robot guy that's in the comics. Can't remember his freaking name. I would have liked to see him in a freaking movie. But for that, Tank Girl, the over the top comedy and fun. Laura Petty just awesome as a character. I like the comedy that's the film. It feels very kooky. It feels like a comic book. The little slides that they put in of her. I think there was one sequence where she got punched, and then there was a slide of her in the comic form, knocked up, like she got punched in the comic. So that was pretty fun. Really, I like it. It's got some action. It's got humor. It's got some fun performances. Now, the one thing I will say that could have worked out better is kind of the kangaroos. I think the kangaroos are okay, but I think when that sequence kind of pops up, that it kind of derails it a little bit. Maybe it's the presentation of them. Maybe it's too many of them. I don't know. It's not that I like Booga. I do like, and I kind of would have liked. Maybe it's the practical effects. It's something about the kangaroo sequences that I just wish it could have been worked better. I feel like if that movie was made now, that they could nail. They did a better job of nailing like the kangaroos and how they moved and stuff. I think it's like the practical side of it. But that's pretty much really the problem I have with that film. And yes, the film story doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and everything's all over the freaking place. But it's still like a fun, enjoyable film. Vampirella, the strength is, I would say, Talisa Soto definitely looks like the character, feels like the character. The weaknesses is pretty much everything else. The villain was bad. The performances of the villain was the worst in terms of performances. I'm not gonna say everybody in the film was bad performing wise, but I know he did. His performance was just terrible, and the dialogue was bad. The script didn't do the film any favors, and it definitely didn't do Soto any favors. But she's beautiful. She looks really good. And some of the moments that she does have in the film, she does get a couple of moments here and there. I like seeing her in the role. I just wish the script was better written and the film better directed. Did these films actually influence later comic book films, I don't know. I mean, I guess you can say, hey, these were technically bad films, and we shouldn't make films again. I would say this: when these films came out, they all bombed, and they put female-led comic films on hiatus, at least until 2004, when I believe Catwoman came out. Nah, because Witchblade came out, and I can't find Witchblade because I ain't trying to watch the series, it's about the movie. I wanted to watch the movie, can't find a freaking movie. So it was either Painkiller Jane came out or Catwoman came out first. I can't remember, but it's one of those moments where people try to dip their toe in the water, and it just was too hot with these films. And because they didn't do well, and it's not that the audience wasn't there, it's just that I think this is one of those moments where maybe if they were made later on, like maybe late 2000s, early 2000s, they would have done better. But then again, I like Dread 3D. Dread 3D was a badass film. Came out in 2012, and that one bombed. And that was one of the best comic book films ever. So I don't know. I don't know if they actually did anything to influence except make people hesitant to make them. But still, and the question, and I just said it. Would audiences receive them differently today? No. No. They put them movies out now, they would still bomb. And it's because, one, they're not, when we look at these characters, Barb Wire, Tank Girl, Vampirella, they're popular. They have their audiences. They are popular. And I don't think, and maybe they don't reach the popularity now as they used to. I think I would say Vampirella probably still is relevant. I just read a while back the Vampirella Dracula series, fun series, and I read another one too. Yeah, Vampirella versus Purgatory. And I think, but I don't think it, but it's not like if you look at her reach is as, as wide as, like, say, Supergirl or Wonder Woman, Black Widow because of the MCU, Captain Marvel because of the MCU, like characters like that. But on a smaller scope, I think but these could work on a smaller scope, just better written. And if I were to rank these films, I would say, and I maybe in terms of quality, I don't know. I can't tell if it's between quality and entertainment. Because if we're going entertainment, I would say Tank Girl, Barb Wire, Vampirella. If I would say quality, it would be Barb Wire, Tank Girl, Vampirella. So I'm on the fence because I think that they each do something different, but at the same time, again, 3 films, not a lot of choices. And to be honest, Vampirella was pretty bad. It was. It was. I'm sorry. It's just a bad film. I tried to give it a shot, and nothing against Soto. I think she's a beautiful woman. I think she could have been good with the roles. It just wasn't good. But I do like Pamela Anderson. I do like Lori Petty in these films. I think they did a great job. In fact, between the 3 films, all 3 of the women did. Okay, 2 of the women did a good job. The 3rd one did an all right job. If you know, you know. But that's and also something I didn't point out is none of these characters are like superheroes. They're all anti-heroes in ways, because you think of Tank Girl, she's not particularly good, she's not particularly bad. Pamela Anderson's not particularly good, she's not particularly bad. Vampirella's more good, but I wouldn't say she's like the pinnacle of humanity or anything like that. She's got edge, and she's kind of riding the fine line there, and I like that. I do like that they aren't heroes. And these stories or when when we're when we're looking at the rise of comic book films, a lot of it is attributed to kind of like the realism and the dark aspect of comics. And I think that despite like Tank Girl being a bit goofy, it still goes to some dark places. Barb Wire goes to some dark places, and even Vampirella, for as cheesy it is, goes to some dark places. And I think that these films should be credited with that, because I think they were some of the stepping stones to, you know, us getting to a point where we get more legitimate comic book films in terms of gritty realism, in terms of not just riding a fine line of good and evil, just kind of somebody just in the middle. Hell, if you look at what came out, Blade is a hero, but he's kind of like an anti-hero almost. But he's still pretty badass, and the realism of that started paving the way. I mean, you look at the 10-year gap between Batman '89 and Blade, you see that the dark grittiness of heroes and anti-heroes is what started the craze of. But then again, you got like Spider-Man and Superman, so what do I know? But anyways, guys, in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts. Did you agree with any of my points? How would you rank these films, and which one is your favorite? Which one is the worst one? We all know, but I gotta ask anyway. Be sure to hit that like, subscribe, and that notification button to get the best what we got going on this channel, and we'll definitely catch you guys later.